Over the past few years, I've gotten a lot of questions about the extreme music mega mashups and how I made them and sort of like what I was thinking when I was making them. So I thought today, as a different kind of video, it might be fun and even interesting to kind of go through the first extreme music mega mashup and kind of let you guys know my process of how I made it, and even strip it down and kind of like see what's underneath it and behind the scenes.
I walk a lonely road, the only one that I have ever known. Don't know where.
The beginning was probably the hardest part because it kind of sets the tone to the entire rest of the mega mashup and puts all the pieces together, like lays them out. And I kind of wanted the beginning to feel like a little intro and then suddenly a sort of like bass drop or like a chorus. And I went through a lot of intros too. And I didn't really want to focus on any one song too much in the beginning because it would make it feel like it's just a mashup for that song, like Boulevard of Broken Dreams. I didn't want to like have too much of that, or else it would feel like a Boulevard of Broken Dreams mashup. So I kind of had that, and then the Seven Nation Army vocals come in, the flamingo beat. So it's like constantly changing and sort of setting the tone for the rest of the mega mashup, that it's going to be like changing a lot, but also motifing back to these like songs in the beginning where there are other parts of those songs come up, like the chorus of Boulevard of Broken Dreams comes up eventually, and the Seven Nation Army guitar at the very beginning leads into the vocals. And then Shelter. I think this is the first time I ever used Shelter in a mashup. I just love that song a lot. This was before I was able to do anything like vocal chopping and like pitching the Shelter vocals to different melodies and all that. So I just use the vocals really simply here. The Parappa the Rappa song, this song like stuck out to a lot of people, I think because it's such an obscure source. I got the idea to use it from another mashup by Shock. The mashup was called Romantic Toasty Buns. The vocals really stood out to me in that mashup too, so I wanted to include them somehow.
When worlds collide, you'll laugh so hard, you'll swear you died.
I think right around the time the SpongeBob Worlds Collide song comes in, you kind of know that it like gets a little silly, and since they're not melodic really, they let me do a bit of a key change here. So it kind of like abandoned any like melody and stuff for a while. So I could key change from F minor into G minor at this part. And that lets me include other songs like Bangarang. This part was probably one of my favorites to do for this because it was kind of after the Clint Eastwood vocals. They sort of ended, so I was able to just like take the rest of this Bangarang job and just put a bunch of like other samples into it before we get into the next part. So there's like the Chill Bill, the Bill Nye the Science Guy theme, the DJ Khaled samples. It was just a good way to like have a bunch of chaos going on, I guess, before the next part where it gets a lot more chill. When the Sweatshirt song by Jacob Sartorius comes in, it kind of lets you know that it's pulling out of this like darker part in the mashup. And wow, I haven't thought of a Sweatshirt song in a long time. As an old meme song now. So I thought it was a good transition to use here. I thought that Resonance by Home right here was a really good place to have a tempo change, because the intro of that song is really like electronic. There's no like drums or anything. It kind of goes under the radar that it's like getting slower and slower. Witchcraft by Pendulum. That's like one of my favorite songs ever, honestly. And this is kind of a, you don't know if it's going to be a drop of like a half-time 87 BPM part or a much faster part. So I think the Witchcraft comes in kind of abruptly, but it kind of works because it's just like a sudden injection of energy. We Are Number One was a huge meme back when I made this too, and I'm actually really happy to see, by the way, that it's like still a huge meme now and lots of people are making rips and mashups out of it. But this was right when they released the stems for that song. So like the vocals, but also the drums and the synths and everything. So I was really happy to be able to use just the drums from the song and the vocals and kind of like splice them in at different parts when I want them to. And then the vocals come back later which you'll see. For this part of the mashup, there's a lot of songs that I knew that I really wanted to include from the beginning, like Snow Halation and Take On Me. And so I thought the time was like right when I was making the mashup, because it's like at that faster tempo, and I just thought like tonally it would work okay. Hearing it now for the first time in a while, it sounds kind of abrupt to me, but at the time it was a lot of fun to do and I didn't really notice. And this part gets really silly with the Outcast vocals and the Big Man Shaq vocals kind of like splicing together and filling up the space between the Snow Halation and the Take On Me vocals. Snow Halation is such a good song. It's magical. And I really wanted to include the Hey Hey Yeah song, because that is another one of my favorite meme songs of all time, and I listened to it all the time as a kid. And so I thought at the Take On Me part it would have fit perfectly.
Let them see that you're good. This song has been memorable.
This gets back into the JonTron Firework vocals for just a little bit, just the non-melodic parts of him talking. Because right at this part, it kind of shifts the tempo again and goes back to some of the songs that you heard at the beginning of the mashup. So I didn't want to completely ignore the middle part of the mashup that we just heard with firework vocals and everything else. So I wanted to include a piece of that here. I knew I wanted to include Midnight City at some point in the mashup, and I thought it worked well here as kind of a breakdown before the final climax of the mashup. For a long time I thought that Midnight City would be the climax of the mashup. That made it feel kind of like there's too much Midnight City, and it's sort of just too much of one song that it feels just like a Midnight City mashup. This is what it would sound like if Midnight City were the finale. So Sweatshirt comes back in, and then there's Sleepyhead by Passion Pit, which is another song that's not really a meme again, but a lot of people reacted positively to it, and remembered it also from Little Big Planet the game, which is a really awesome and nostalgic game. So I'm happy that people liked it, and I think it did work well as a finale. The Seven Nation Army vocals are kind of like a cue that the mashup is ending, and it's coming back to some of those other songs that were at the very beginning. And then here comes the Flamingo and Boulevard of Broken Dreams. And they kind of have their own little ending arcs too, where you finally hear more of the Flamingo vocals in the chorus of Boulevard of Broken Dreams.
How could this happen to me?
It was the first part of the mashup that actually there's All Star by Smash Mouth, which is kind of crazy that I didn't use it earlier on, but it's almost like it ends and you're like, oh, like that's even another meme song that you didn't really think of as you were listening to the mashup. And you only hear the whistle, but in the second and third Mega Mashups, that's when you hear more of the vocals. So I kind of felt that it was like All Star has its own arc throughout the other Mega Mashups. Yeah, I was so proud of that idea of ending it with a I tried so hard vocals, because it's just me saying like, yeah, I tried really hard with this mashup. I made this mashup in Audacity back in the day, by the way. So if you want to make mashups and you're intimidated by any complicated software, just know that you can make something like this in like free and simple software like Audacity. So this was pretty fun to go back and look at this older mashup that I've made. I think that I'm at a point where I've kind of grown enough since making it that I can kind of critique myself and be honest about some of the mistakes, but also still feel really proud about certain parts of the mashup, and even see how some of the ideas that I had and habits still carry on with me in the mashups and music that I make today. And I just want to say that I'm incredibly grateful that a lot of you guys like resonated with this mashup, and that some of you guys were even inspired to make your own mashups after hearing it, which is really amazing to me because that's what other mashups inspired me to do. And it's not even opened me up to just mashups, but also just a lot of other music in general. Hopefully this was interesting and fun. I hope you guys liked this different kind of video that I'm not usually known for making, but look forward to more mashups and music soon.